Hello and welcome to today's webinar, On-Demand Disaster Recovery for Virtual Desktop Infrastructure Environments. Today's event is brought to you by Datum and produced by Actual Tech Media. Now, before we get started, we have a little bit of housekeeping we first need to cover. My name is David Davis. I'm a partner at Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be your moderator for today's event. We want this to be an educational event, so we encourage you to use the questions box there in the GoToWebinar control panel to ask as many questions as you'd like throughout the event. We also encourage you to check out the handouts that are available for download in the GoToWebinar control panel. It's there that you'll find 3 resources: the Datum Guide to Ransomware Protection, the Datum Disaster Recovery as a Service with VMware Cloud on AWS white paper, and the Datum Disaster Recovery as a Service with VMware Cloud on AWS product brief. So make sure you go ahead and just download those PDFs right now. I'll give you a minute to do that. All right, time's up. Make sure you've got those 3 PDFs downloaded so you can check those out after the event, because those are some good resources. Now, at the end of today's event, I'll also be announcing the prize winner of the Amazon $300 gift card that we're giving away on this live event. If you're watching this event on demand, I'm sorry, the drawing has already occurred. Full prize terms and conditions can be found at events.actualtechmedia.com. If you'd like to donate your prize value to charity, we would love to help you do that. We have many generous attendees who win prizes and want to help someone who's less fortunate and choose to donate their prizes to charity. So if you should choose to do that, thank you in advance. And now it's time to kick off today's webinar. I'm excited to introduce 2 experts who I've known for many years. These guys are amazingly smart, and they've got some great content lined up for you today. On the event today, you'll hear from Mr. Andrei Leibovich, Field CTO at Datum, and Mr. Simon Long, Senior Solutions Architect at Datum. And now I'll hand it over to our first presenter. Take it away, Andrei.
Hi, thanks. So today we are going to talk about disaster recovery for virtual desktop infrastructure, be it VMware Horizon, Datastore, or maybe a different type of VDI environment. And also going to cover a little bit about ransomware. So as for the agenda, we're going to talk about the VDI tuning stack as created by Login VSI. We're going to talk about the Datum Ultimatrix, which is a blueprint, high-level blueprint for the Datum solution. Some of the challenges for recovering from disasters, be it on-premise, in the DR side, or even in the cloud. And then we touch also on Datum DR as a service, which provides a subscription-based solution to fully orchestrate DR into VMware Cloud on AWS. And then we're going to see a demo. Simon Long will provide us with a demo of Horizon View into the VMware Cloud. And finally, also cover some of the benefits of Datum solution for VDI. So the important thing that to baseline our conversation is that as seen in the VDI tuning stack by Login VSI, there are a number of different categories here, and Datum is able to provide some sort of solution for all the categories where you see a little arrow on the side, which is really interesting. But also what's not there is disaster recovery. And I think as part of this presentation, we're going to focus heavily on disaster recovery. But before I move forward into that, it's important to understand what's happening in the world, because more and more we hear about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, being able to leverage resources and burst capacity. But it's really hard to embrace the cloud, because at the center of your data center, there's data. And unfortunately, it's very hard to move data around. And your data center also has legacy components that have been there for the past 15, 20 years, and they were never really designed to work together. So there are a number of different challenges to modernize the data center. So let's start looking at the primary storage. Your VDI solution lives on primary storage. All the virtual machines and virtual desktops are provided from your primary storage. You may have a SAN, which is reliable, but it's also complex. There's LAN management, masking, zoning. It's rigid, it's hard to scale, and so on. On the other hand, you might have HCI solutions that is very simple to use, but also have scale and resiliency issues. You only see like small deployments with HCI. Then you have backup. Your virtual desktop, if you're using persistent desktops, you may need to make sure you have backup because you have user data and user applications there. Generally speaking, you have backup storage, backup servers, and they provide low RPO and low RTO, which means you only back up every 12 hours or every 24 hours. And the recovery of this data is also take a lot of time, a long time, especially if it's coming from the cloud. Many organizations will be worried about security, so they will encrypt data. So is data encrypted just at rest, so it's only being protected against someone stealing a hard drive, or is it on the wire? So like on the host, on the wire, and at rest. The problem with on the wire is that solutions that provide that will not provide data services like the dupe and compression. So there are some limitations there as well. Finally, there's the cloud. It provides a number of different services, and there's a big potential, and everybody wants the cloud, but it's very hard. Data is in your data center. How do you move data to the cloud and back, especially when you need to fail over and fail back, and it becomes really expensive. There's egress costs and so on. So it's also a big part of what organizations are trying to do. And finally, you have DR. You have two sides, one primary side, one DR side. You have your VDI running in production on one side, you're replicating somehow to the other side. Now we have a number of different products there, replication for the SAN, you have maybe a backup going there. You also have the orchestration tool. You have a number of different products that make up DR and actually very fragile. So when you look at this picture, so there's so many components in the data center that need to work together, but at the center of everything is data. And the problem is that when you apply all those policies to data, it's only valid for that data center. Once you move that data somewhere else, be it a DR data center or the cloud, those policies will not follow. So it's really hard to modernize and move forward and embrace multi-cloud and hybrid cloud. So, and look, don't take this picture as a go at any of the companies here. It's just a reality of the data center where you have a number of different vendors that provide all these different solutions in your primary data center. And this is what we'll call you being landlocked. So your data is landlocked. We can't move your data anywhere because you lose all the policies, right? Now, on the cloud, it may seem that it's a little bit simpler, but also it's complex. If you look at Amazon, there are 5 different products to provide all those 5 different services. So that's what we've been calling cloud locked. And this is what Datum is about and where we excel. We have a single platform that provides all these primary services, primary storage, backup, and data mobility, encryption, and DR, using those policies and applying to the data and allowing this data to flow between data centers and the cloud while still being able to apply all those policies. So you have your backup retention, you have your RPO, your SLAs, your encryption. It will follow the data or the virtual desktops or the virtual machines and so on, or your entire VDI infrastructure between data centers and the cloud. So in this way, we're kind of abstracting a little bit the cloud, so we kind of feature-proof, and we do that in a very automated fashion. But when we look at the platform itself, Ultimatrix, there are 3 use cases that we may consider, and this is a very high-level overview. So you have the production side where we run the DVX system. You might have a secondary side. You also run the DVX system. It goes on-premise, and then you have another component that's called Control Shift. This is our software as a service DR orchestrator. And then you have the public cloud. In the public cloud, we have two components there. We kind of bundle into something called DRaaS, or Disaster Recovery as a Service. There's something called DVX, which is our backup as a service, or your backup vault on AWS. And then we have VMware Cloud integration to fail over everything to the cloud. So let's look at DVX first, which is the ability to run applications or virtual desktops at high performance. Okay, so I know many of you may be familiar, but IDC started talking about this disaggregator HCI being the next evolution of HCI, which is very similar to HCI, but it has a 2-tier, which enables you to scale performance independent of capacity. So let's look a little bit into it. So as part of the DVX system, we allow you to use any server with any flash. So all the servers have flash in the host, and you can scale from one host all the way to 128 hosts in a single solution, in a single namespace, if you will. And the servers themselves, despite they do have data in flash, so it provides what we call data locality, they are stateless. So if you lose them, it doesn't matter, you don't lose any data. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Now, in each one of the hosts, you might be running your VMware infrastructure, and there's a software that goes there. We actually support bare metal Linux as well, and Kubernetes and OpenShift and so on. So there's a piece of software that run there, and we'll do inline compression, inline deduplication, and inline encryption, and provide a global namespace across all the servers in the DVX system. Now, that flash that is on the server provides ultra low latency, high speed, and high I/O reads for the workloads, and also provide a deduped cache. So that provides that microsecond latency experience that users love, and especially when talking about virtual desktop infrastructure, this is really important because users want performance, and you need to make sure that they are happy. I've seen organizations that failed in deploying VDI to the level that the users were expecting, and they had a really hard time to convince the users to use the virtual desktop infrastructure even after they fixed the problem. Now, some customers of ours have been using even NVMEs on the host, which is fully supported, and it works great. Then we have what's called a data tier or capacity tier, where you have enterprise-grade data nodes that are highly resilient, like SAN-style resiliency, that scale from one data node all the way up to 10, which gives up to 4 petabytes of capacity with an average reduction of 4.4 across our customers. And because of this disaggregated infrastructure, this dual tier, it enables us to do a lot of very interesting things. So one of them is we have the ability to do atomic snapshots that are don't impact performance at all. So you may have your applications running at full speed on the performance tier, while we take the snapshots on the capacity tier without impact on application, zero impact on application performance, but it also enables you to take millions of snapshots. And that becomes really interesting when you start talking about ransomware, where you might have ransomware spread across the organization. Now you need to restore, and you need to restore 5 minutes ago and not 12 hours ago. And we give you the ability to take those million snapshots, and you can take like every minute if you want to. And because the backup and the data tier hold all the data in a fully distributed manner and fully protected, we also enables you to do instant recovery of the data. So you want to say, I want to restore to this point in time, and you say go, and the data is available instantly, because all it has to do is upload the data from the capacity tier into the performance tier. There's a lot more to talk here, of course. This is sort of like a high-level overview of the technology. This is what runs in the data center. It's called the DVX. Now, one thing is me to say, we perform really well, and it's really fast. The other thing is actually to partner with Dell and Intel and Samsung and run a proper benchmark. So IOMAR conducted a benchmark in the Dell labs with 128 servers. This is a public benchmark. You can go to IOMARK and download the report. And it was proved that Datum is 10 times faster than the fastest HCI solution on the market today, 5 times faster than the fastest all-flash array. But the really interesting piece is that a third of the latency of all of them. I'm not going to get into details on how this benchmark is done, but just so you understand, it's a mix of all types of applications that are populated into the platform. So you be sure that once you deploy, Datum is highly scalable and it's highly performant. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about disaster recovery, because this is the focus of our presentation today. And this is more and more a huge concern for organizations. Some reports and some surveys prove that 50% of the organizations have experienced some sort of DR event in the past 24 months. This is really high. And as you can see, organizations are becoming more and more concerned about ransomware. I was talking to an organization just last week, and they were hit twice by ransomware just this year. So this is a really big problem that organizations don't really necessarily want to talk about. It can be damaging to their reputation, to their stocks, and to the market in general. So when we talk to them, 80% of the companies says that they actually would use the public cloud for DR to recover, either from ransomware or an outage, if they could pay on demand and if they had assurance that it would work all the time. So this is really interesting as well. So even though organizations are concerned about DR and so on, they also want to use the cloud and a pay-as-you-go model so they can reduce the cost of having a passive site running all the time if they could pay on demand for DR in the cloud. At Datum, we are on a mission to bring enterprise-grade DR to every IT team and also help to cut cost and complexity. So we want to make DR very simple, reliable, and cost-effective, and not be a afterthought anymore, right? Or a guessing game. Many organizations that we talk to, they say, yeah, we do have, either they don't have DR or they do have DR, but they never test. They don't know if it's going to work. I was just talking to recently with a customer who had to trigger DR with a different product. They actually didn't trigger DR. They were running a DR test to the DR data center. Everything worked fine. And then when they had to move back, the DR didn't work. So the failback didn't work. So they were running out of their DR data center for the past, I think 5 or 6 months at that point in time. So those things are really important, and organizations starting to pay more and more attention. So how can I have a reliable solution for DR that's cost effective, but also enables me to seamlessly fail back if I need to, right? So you don't want to be running either out of either out of your DR side or from the cloud for a long time. So that's all good. Datum already offered a control shift that I mentioned, that it was a fully orchestrated DR between on-premise sites. And then we just announced on-demand DR for the VMware Cloud on AWS. So from on-premise to VMware Cloud on AWS. So you only start paying for the resources on the cloud once you go into DR mode or like a DR event happens. So it's very cost effective. Completely eliminate the secondary data center. And the more interesting is that because we have Cloud DVX, which is the VMware Vault on AWS fully integrated, and we also have VMware Cloud through native APIs, we have the ability to instantly make that data available to the VMware Cloud and restore those VMs into your VMware SDDC very quickly, very fast, and all the way through. Even when you're not in DR mode, we do what's called continuous compliance tests. So we check to make sure that DR will happen and it will work when you need. So this is the DRaaS for VMware Cloud and AWS. Now, what we are going to release soon, it's coming soon, is the DRaaS Connect feature or product that we will enable a couple of things. The first one is any VMware customer with a VMware infrastructure, be it running on a SAN, a NAS, or a HCI solution, will be able to leverage this same backup as a service and DR as a service solution for their infrastructure without having to acquire or buy DVX, which is the on-premise hardware and software that we sell to customers. They will only have to download a virtual appliance and connect through VADP, and things will work natively through vCenter and vSphere. So it's very, very cool, bringing easy DR and orchestration for any VMware infrastructure. And the second piece that we are releasing here is DR between VMware Cloud SDDCs. So VMware Cloud is great. It enables you to deploy native VMware workloads, but it doesn't really have a solution for backup and DR. So we bring in this to VMware Cloud SDDC, so you'll be able to back up and replicate all your data between SDDCs in different AZs, different availability zones. So with that, now we have on-prem DVX infrastructure, DRaaS Connect for VMware on-premise, and then also DRaaS Connect for the VMware Cloud on AWS. Really, really cool. Now, another thing that we make a big deal about, and I talked a little bit here, is the ability to do instant RTO. What does that mean? So, you back up your data from on-premise to the AWS S3 Vault, and then what do you do? So there are many backup solutions that will also back up to S3, but then you need to restore everything, and it might take a lot of time, and it will cost a lot of money because you need to pay for the egress cost. We give you the ability to instantly restart your applications in the VMware Cloud in the event of a downtime, site downtime. So that also gives you the ability to recover from ransomware, and we also enable you to fail back your entire environment, and we do that only only with the data that has changed while you're running in DR mode, which this is really cool. I actually don't know any other solution on the market that can do that today, and we do that without any VM conversions. So because it's vSphere everywhere, there's no VM conversions. The ability to recover instantly is really interesting, but moreover, we give you the ability to restore from any point in time. So in many cases, you might not want to restore the last backup or the last snapshot. You might want to go back to 1 hour ago or 4 hours ago. Now, when did your organization was attacked by ransomware? When was the ransomware spread, as an example? So that gives you flexibility to recover from recent snapshots and also from old snapshots, and not only few VMs. You can bring up thousands of VMs at the same time. I also talked a little bit about that, the compliance checking. So once you establish your DR plans, we do compliance checking every 30 minutes that will guarantee that your infrastructure and all your components are fully working, and we do the compliance reports and send emails. We send emails if anything has changed. We send emails if one of the tests have failed. So this is really good and allows you to also be proactive in with your business and stakeholders, sending them reports and proving that everything is okay and is going to work. This is also really cool. It's like an X-ray for your DR readiness. And what I mentioned before, I see a lot of solutions on the market that will do DR and failover, but how do you actually fail back? This is probably one of the most complex things to do in data center. And if you have to reseed your primary data center when you failing back, that will take a long time and it will be really complex. You really don't want to do that and be in a position to have to do that. So even though you only really want to trigger DR when it's extremely necessary, with Datum, if you trigger DR, it's going to be easy to fail back. And the operational consistency, of course, it's vSphere everywhere, so it's less training. Your team is already using VMware inside your organization, so there's really nothing new to learn or to manage. So this is a huge benefit, right? You don't want to have to learn a new platform when you go into DR mode. Now, customers will ask me, so how do I consume that? So I'll tell you, it's very, very simple. It's everything provided as a service. Datum will offer you the contract that covers the VMware Cloud cost and the AWS cost. So you have a single point of billing. We also have a single point of support for the whole stack. We'll manage the uptime and compliance of the DR orchestration. We'll manage the backup vault on AWS. We will make sure your plans are in compliance. The only thing that you as an organization need to do is define what the DR plans are and create those DR plans. And of course, purchase the right plan for your SLA needs. So here is a good detailed customer example. Here you had a customer, and this is one of our customers today. They were running the 10 extra primary storage. They had Rubrik for backup and Zerto for DR. They were replicating a lot of data to AWS. So Rubrik was replicating their backups and snapshots to the cloud, to S3. Zerto was also replicating data to EBS. If they had a DR event, they would have to refactor all that data into EC2 instances and get VMs up and running, but no easy way to move the VMs back or replicate back if they needed. So 4 different products, 4 different bills, had to do VM conversion. Failover, yeah, might be okay, but really no way to fail back easily. So they moved to Datum. They get a single product, single bill, 1 click to fail over, 1 click to fail back. On the way back, there's no need to reseed the entire data center. Is only the data that has changed. And even that, like that, there's like full deduplication and compression, so there's less cost on egress. There's no VM conversion as well, so it's VMware everywhere. And because of all that, they're getting 10x more effective in cost compared to the previous solution. Of course, this is applicable to all sorts of infrastructures, and especially when running VMware, to virtual desktop infrastructure, to server virtualization in general. But what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the demo. The demo is going to be focused in migrating Horizon to the cloud, and Simon is going to do the demo for us. Hey, Simon, you there?
Thanks, Andre. Okay, so before we go into the demonstration itself, I think it would probably be good for me to give you a bit of a high-level overview of the environment as a whole. So when I'm going through and we're showing you different windows and locations and things, it makes a bit more sense to you. So in this demonstration, we have 2 sites. On the west coast here, we have our Datum Colo data center, which is where we have our on-premises DVX. And then we also have a VMC on AWS SCDCE instance in the US East Ohio data center. And essentially what we're going to do is we're going to fail over our Horizon workload from our on-premises DVX over to our VMC on AWS. Sounds very simple. So the Horizon environment itself, and for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with the Horizon, one of the reasons why, well, there's 2 reasons why we've chosen to use Horizon for this demonstration. 1, I'm quite familiar with Horizon, so it makes my life a lot easier. And 2, Horizon has a lot of dependencies in terms of core components such as Active Directory, DNS, DHCP, etc. So we wanted to make something quite complex rather than just failing over a simple VM. So if you don't have Horizon in your environment, I'd recommend you kind of squint at the screen as I'm talking through this and just pretend it's one of your applications. If you can get Horizon to fail over, there's a strong possibility that majority of your applications will fail over. So in this demonstration, we've got 4 main servers. We have our Active Directory domain controller, which includes DNS and DHCP. We have the SQL database, which is relied upon by Horizon Connection Server and the App Volumes Manager servers. In addition to those 4 servers, we have 50 instant clone desktops. We're going to have 50 full clone desktops. And we're going to be using an app stack, which is Notepad++, to demonstrate the application transfer, and also writable volumes. And if you're not familiar with app volumes, a writable volume is a way of offering persistent experience to a non-persistent desktop. So let's head into the demonstration. So this is our Control Shift user interface. Here we can see the global overview of our Datum environment, including both our on-premises environment, which we're showing here, DVX98, which is in our Colo data center. We have our cloud DVX instance, which is running in AWS. And you can see the little dotted arrows here. What these are showing us is the direction of replication. So you can see there we're replicating from our on-premises DVX to our cloud DVX in AWS. And then we have our VMC on AWS SCDC instance also running in VMC. And I think it's probably worth pointing out here that in early 2020 we'll be releasing a new feature of DRaaS called DRaaS Connect, which will allow you to get DR with instant RTO for your workloads, but from any vSphere environment, regardless of what storage you're running, whether it's SAN, NAS, HCI, etc. And this also expands to the cloud. You will also be able to automatically failover from your VMC and AWS SCDC instance to another VMC and AWS instance running in a different availability zone. So that's something to definitely keep an eye out in 2020. Taking a look at the two vCenters that we have in the environment, on the left-hand side is our on-premises vCenter, where we have 50 full clone desktops deployed. And also 50 instant clone desktops deployed. We have our golden images, which is used to create our instant clone pool. And then we have those 4 management servers that I was talking about earlier: our Active Directory domain controller, connection server, SQL database, and our app volumes manager. And on the right hand side, we have our vCenter for our VMC on AWS SCDC. And there you can see it's pretty empty. We just have a few folders there ready for our failover. So before we go into the failover, one of the things I want to do is to log into one of our on-premises desktops. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file and save that onto the desktop of the virtual machine itself. Now, as I mentioned, we are using app volumes, writable volumes with this environment. So that file is going to get captured into the writable volumes file, which we're going to fail over later on. So just taking a look at how we're protecting our on-premises environment and how we're getting our snapshots replicated into our cloud DVX. Here you can see I have 5 protection groups, and I'll just drill down into one of them to show you how it's configured. So this protection group protects the 4 management servers that are required for our environment. And here we can see, and I'll just pause it for a moment, that we are taking daily snapshots, and the frequency of how you snap your protection groups will depend on your SLAs. So if you have quite a low RPO, recovery point objective, you can drop this down to something as low as 5 minutes if you really wanted to take a snapshot every 5 minutes. And here we can also determine where we want to replicate our snapshots to, whether we want to just keep them in our on-premises DVX or whether we want to send them to a separate DVX, or in this instance we're going to send them into our cloud DVX instance running in AWS. And here you can specify how long you want to keep those snapshots for as well. So on-premises you may want to keep for a month, and maybe you want to archive for a longer period of time in the cloud. So let's head over to our disaster recovery tab. Here is where we can create and manage all of our disaster recovery plans for our environment. I've pre-created 5 disaster recovery plans for this demonstration. In a real world, you're probably just going to have one disaster recovery plan that will run through all of the steps that you need. But in order to make this a bit quicker and you can kind of see how we've set things up individually, I've gone for 5 different individual ones here. This is the disaster recovery plan for our management servers. Here we can see we're protecting our on-premises environment, and we're going to be failing over to our SCDC and VMC. This is the protection group that we want to fail over as part of this DR plan. And then what we're going to do in the DR plan is start to do our mappings. So we're going to map which vCenter we're going from and to, which folders are our on-premises VMs stored into, and where do we want them to be deployed into in our SCDC. Same with the compute resources, which cluster do we want to go from and to. And we just step through these one at a time during the configuration. We can map our virtual networks. So here we can see we're just going from a like network to another one very similar. And if we wanted to, we could also specify IP address changes. And here we have the recovery steps, and I'll just pause for a moment. Here we can see that the first thing we're going to bring up as part of our recovery is our Active Directory domain controller. So we're going to bring that up, and then we're going to wait for 30 seconds for all of the services within that server to be brought up and to be ready for us. Once the Active Directory domain controller is ready, we'll then bring on the other 3 servers in our management, and then they should all be able to communicate fine with Active Directory. And once they're all powered on, we should be good to go. So that's pretty much it in terms of the disaster recovery plan. Very simple, straightforward, and easy to use. But one of the most important things, and I'll just pause it again for a second, that I feel is pretty much one of our most powerful features is what we call continuous compliance. So every 30 seconds, we're essentially going to be checking both the on-premises environment and the destination environment to make sure that what you've configured in your DR plan is still correctly configured in your environment. Any changes that you make within the environment that will cause a problem to the failover, we will alert you to that problem so you can make changes and either revert back the changes you made or go into the plan and edit it with the updated changes that you have in your environment. So this is really powerful. So we want to make sure we've always got this green tick. That will make sure that every time we fail over, we can guarantee success. So let's actually run through the failover now. So on the left-hand side, we can see our disaster recovery plans. And on the right-hand side of the screen, we can see our VMC on AWS vCenter. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the big blue failover button. Here we can see that we have green tick marks throughout all of our DR plan. And then we can select which snapshot we want to fail over to. So typically you would, in a DR scenario, probably going to pick the latest snapshot, which will mean you'll have the smallest RPO. But there may be times, for example, with ransomware attacks where you may want to fail back maybe a month or 2 months before you got infected by that ransomware. But for this environment, we're just going to fail back to the latest snapshot. And then we're just going to type in failover, and then we're going to kick off. So on the left-hand side, we can now see all the failover process running and all the steps that are happening in the background. On the right-hand side, we can already see our Active Directory domain controller being added into the inventory, being reconfigured. This is where we could change the networking, for example, put it on to the correct networks. And whilst that's running, what I'm going to do to speed things up a little bit is I'm going to run a second DR plan at the same time. And here we're going to fail over our Horizon Instant Clone Golden Image. So we're now at the moment we have 2 DR plans running at the same time. And as you can see on the right hand side, we have our Windows 10 Instant Clone Master Image being brought into the inventory of vCenter. And now we can see our App Volumes Manager, Connection Server, and SQL databases being added into the inventory, being powered on, and being brought online. And now essentially that's kind of it. Datum has done its job at this point. It's failed over those 4 VMs, it's powered them on, and they're now available within the environment. Our next step, we're going to fail over our Horizon full clones. So we have 50 Horizon full clones that we're going to be failing over to VMC. So whilst the full clones are failing over, we're going to go into our connection server and make some configuration changes. Now I've decided to script these using PowerShell, but essentially all we're doing is we're telling Horizon that we have a new vCenter, which is our VMC vCenter, and we're pointing Horizon to that. So when we create our instant clone pools, which you can see there on the screen, the instant clones are going to be created within the vCenter in VMC. And likewise with app volumes, we need to tell app volumes that we have a new vCenter, that the old one no longer exists, and the new one is now available to us. And that way we can make sure that we have all of our writable volumes and our app stacks available to us. So we're just going to do a rescan of the data store. It will find our app stack here. We've got Notepad++, and then we have all of our writable volumes available in it. So now all we're doing is just waiting for our instant clones to be created. That process takes a little bit of time, but we can see them all coming online now and being customized. And at this point, we can head over to the Horizon Connection Server itself, and we can log into either of our full clone desktop or our instant clone desktop. We're going to load the file, and hopefully we'll be able to see that file available to us that were created before we failed over. So as you can see, we've failed over with no errors at all. All we need to do is just run a commit. And one very cool feature of part of this is, if we just tick that box there, which says create a failback plan, essentially what we're going to do is take our disaster recovery plan that we've just failed over to VMC, and we're going to reverse that plan. So as soon as we've fixed the issue that is on our on-premises environment, or rebuilt the data center, or whatever it was that made us fail over to the cloud, we can then run that failback plan, and it will essentially reverse the whole process that you've just seen. Now, one very cool thing about the failback is because Datum has global deduplication, we're only going to bring back the changes that have been made within that environment. So if you're only failed over for 2 to 3 days, for example, there's not going to be a lot of data change within those 2 to 3 days, which means we're only going to bring back that small amount of data change. We're not going to bring back every single VM, which is going to really save you on costs from egress traffic in AWS, and it'll also increase the speed of time it takes to fail back your environment. So we're just going to commit that failover. Failover is successful. And now what we can do is we can create a PDF report, and this PDF report can be saved, downloaded, and you can email it over to your management, and it goes through the whole plan, everything, what was happened, all the steps, what order they happened in, how long each step took, were there any errors, etc. And then this can be handed off to your management. So that's pretty much it. It's a very simple demonstration, but if you kind of just take a moment to sit back and think to yourself, if I was to try and do something like this within my environment, what would I need to do, or what would I need to have in place in order to be able to fail over my virtual machines from an on-premises environment to a VMC on AWS environment, or to any cloud, really? So that's something that I often ask people to do, is Datum makes things look very simple. Even though they look very simple, they're actually very powerful. So have a think about what that would take for you to be able to do this in your environment. So in addition to the benefits that you've just seen in the demonstration and how easy it is to fail over a whole Horizon environment from an on-premises environment to the cloud, running VDI in Datum's DVX can also add some other benefits. Golden image replication, and this is something that I had particular difficulties when I was recently running a VDI environment. We're able to take snapshots of your golden images, including the vSphere snapshots, and we can replicate them to any other DVX instance that you have within your environment, or of course into VMC on AWS. So this makes sure that you only have to update your main golden image, and you can replicate all those changes to all of your other environments that you have, knowing that all of your images are now consistent across the board. If you're using writable volumes, for example, we're able to back up and restore your writable volumes. This is something I've had particular problems with before. Because of the way that the product is architected, the writable volume manifests itself as a VMDK file, and they're only connected to a virtual machine when the users log in and or log out. Some backup products are only able to back up a VMDK file if they're connected to a virtual machine. But with Datum DVX, we're able to back up and restore your writable volumes regardless of whether they're connected to a virtual machine or not. And probably one of the most important things when it comes to VDI environments is your user data. If you were to run your Windows file servers on top of Datum DVX, you can also use our built-in backup and restore of guest files. So you can either restore individual files or folders directly into the user's desktop themselves, rather than using a separate backup product. So some very, very useful benefits here just for running VDI on DVX. And lastly, just to add onto those benefits, we're 10 times more cost effective when it comes to disaster recovery, purely because we're able to do a lot of this stuff on demand, which we've just shown you. We can easily recover your VDI environments and failback as well. Failback is very important. In a disaster, we're always worried about actually being able to fail over somewhere so we can bring up our business quickly. But often we forget about how do we move everything back once we've failed over. And this is something that's extremely simple. And a consistent vSphere experience. Often we forget that people need to understand how to use these products. But moving from an on-premises vCenter to a VMC vCenter is almost identical. You can use your same skill set, the same tools that your team are used to, and it becomes a very simple process to fail over and fail back. So with that, let's head into the Q&A. Do we have any questions on the chat?
Yes, we do, Simon and Andre. Great presentation. Let me actually switch over to my screen share here. And while I do that, I encourage you to get in your questions now so that we can run through these in the Q&A here. We do have some questions already, but I encourage you to get those questions in. All right. So, Andre, are you there?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. Thank you, Andre.
Awesome.
So let's see. First question that came in here, they're asking about is how can I ensure my backup data is protected from ransomware? What's the answer to that?
Right, that's a good question. There are multiple ways to actually look at how this would work. So the first piece is understand that all backups and snapshots for all the live running VMs are stored and protected in the data pool, which is on premise. And that would allow you to, and they are immutable, right? So once you create a snapshot, nothing will change that snapshot anymore. And it's not in the same compartment or in the same pool as where the live VMs are running. So that gives you the ability to restore instantly from this data pool into the live running servers. So that's one thing that protects you against an on-site failure of a VM of ransomware. It gives you that instant restore. The second thing is those snapshots can also be replicated to a different site. And in that secondary site, you also have the ability to get those immutable snapshots and restore into live production. And then you also have the ability to replicate those snapshots to Cloud DVX, which is the vault on AWS. And then you can use that as your repository to either restore into a on-premise site or into the VMware cloud. But I guess the whole idea here is that all those snapshots, they are not in your live running environment, and they are also immutable in what we call a Snapstore. So there is both physical and logical segmentation, and that will enable you to restore to any point in time. You could have snapshots every minute as an example, and restore them into live production.
Okay, very nice. And I know, I mean, with ransomware, it's awesome, to have the data and make sure it's not infected with ransomware. But a common question here that I've seen that just came in, they're asking about what about mass restore? I mean, I know you said Datrium was crazy, incredible performance. Can this solution help me to be able to do those massive restores like I might need to do if I had a ransomware attack?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. What you need to understand is all your, maybe some of your VMs are compromised, some of your VMs are not, your applications are not. Generally speaking, when you talk about ransomware, it's not something that happened in the last minute. Maybe the ransomware has been in your environment for maybe hours or even days, and you want to restore to the point in time where the ransomware is not there. So once you're ready to do that and you define which applications and which VMs need to be restored, you actually have the ability to trigger a mass restore from the data tier into production environment. And that is also instant. So you could do 100,000 virtual machines. Of course, you need this CPU power to bring all those VMs and applications up and running, but we give you the ability. And when we talk about instant restore, is the data is readily available. Of course, we'll go through the process of booting Windows and Linux and applications that will take some time, but the data is always readily available. So any snap, any point in time. Yeah, so the answer, the short answer is yes. It's possible to restore thousands of VMs at the same time.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see, Garrett's asking, I think we've hit a nerve here with this ransomware topic because we've got quite a few questions coming in on it. Garrett's asking, how does Datrium update or maintain ransomware data? I mean, I think I would rephrase that as, how do you know that, the backup data has been compromised? Is there what's the trigger or signature or alert?
Right. So today we don't help organizations to observe if the applications, data, VMs have ransomware. Where we're helping is if it's more actually when you get ransomware, because our organizations are under pressure to sort of like be able to have policies in place to be able to restore in case of a ransomware attack. If that happens, we give organizations the ability to quickly restore. But as of today, we don't actually detect ransomware. We give you the ability to, for sure, restore to a good non-state, but the ability to actually identify that have ransomware, we don't offer today. There are some discussions about if we could do that, because we hash out the data, so we have the ability to do comparisons, but we don't offer that today. We do give you the ability to restore your environment.
Okay, all right, and that's the most critical piece right there. And then Jeremy's asking, and this is kind of a long question, I'm not sure if you can see it. He said, I just wanted to verify, does it matter what my VM environment is, whether it's local on-site, in a private cloud, or AWS? What type of connection is needed to connect to the DR environment? They currently have an SD-WAN. Maybe you can talk just for a minute about kind of the architecture. If someone does have data on premises and in the cloud, how does Datrium fit into that?
Right. So on premise, all that is required is 10 gig Ethernet with standard non-blocking switches. All the data is locally accessed on the SSD, so all the reads are local. So we offload the network, so only the writes go from the servers to this data tier. Once you hit ransomware, as an example, we get the data and upload into the servers. To send data to a DR site, as an example, we use the universal deduplication. So we hash out the data across sites, and we never send a bit of data that already exists in your DR site. So that means that we also drastically reduce the amount of data that needs to be sent between the sites. It's not that we send the data and then we compare even before sending the data. That might also even eliminate the need for like a one optimization solution. And then it's stored in the data pool in your DR site. So for that reason, not a lot of bandwidth is required. Then we have the cloud DVX, which is again the vault. In this case, we will use internet. We have outbound connectivity to AWS, and again, all the data is fully duplicated even on cloud DVX. So we don't even send data that is already there. And I'm not talking about sending the same file. I'm talking very granular 4K, 8K data blocks that we hash and we compare even before sending. So as you know, there are not a lot of, to send data to AWS is free, but AWS will charge egress costs as well if you need to restore. And that's when it becomes really important to have all this deduplication and not send data that is already on premise or having to reseed your entire data center. So having this deduplication and the hashes being compared gives you the certainty that when you need to restore from the cloud, you're not gonna have to pay a big bill to AWS. Now, between Cloud DVX and VMware Cloud, if it happens to use the VMware Cloud as your DR site, then we just do a live mount, and there's no cost there. Hopefully, okay. It's a long answer, but there are multiple components and where you're replicating to. But the overall idea is that because of this global or universal deduplication, we only send data that doesn't exist on the destination site.
Okay, nice. Let's see, another question here is about, where did it go? They're obviously looking at DR site, cloud-based DR and AWS. And basically it's, how is Datrium DRaaS better? What makes it unique or the best option for them?
So look, there are many solutions out there that will replicate data to the cloud. But I think the big question is, what do you do with the data once it's there, right? Do you need to extract that from S3 or from Glacier and then rehydrate and convert into a different, VM instance, like an EC2 instance as an example. Then you get things up and running there. Now you're up and running in the cloud in DR mode. How do you fail back? So those are the things that you should consider when you're looking at a DR solution. Datum will send data to the cloud and will make it easy to restore, but also will make it easy to get your VMs up and running on VMware Cloud and AWS. And because it's vSphere everywhere, there's no VM conversion to deal with, and VM conversion to failback. We also do the failback. Even the failback uses this whole process of looking at deduplication hashes. So we only ever send data back to AWS Vault and on-premise data that is unique. So you don't have to receive the entire data center. So also, as part of the DR solution, this whole compliance check thing is really interesting because that gives you the certainty that your DR plan will work when you actually need it, be it in 5 months from now or a year from now. The system is constantly checking for all the components required for that DR plan. And if something goes off track, we will alert you, and you have the ability to quickly fix that. So it's much simpler. It's probably more powerful from a cost perspective as well. It don't have the whole seating and egress charges that it would incur in other solutions, and the simplicity of running vSphere everywhere and not having to do VM conversions.
Okay, very nice. I like that. Well, I mean, what do you recommend people do to get started with Datum? What's the best course of action if they're interested in this solution they learned about today?
Well, of course, there are the resources that we made available, the handouts here that they can get started reading. I would recommend to go to our websites, watch some videos, and really talk to us. We're more than happy to come on site or do a online demo so you can see for yourself how that works. I know the demo that Simon did is pretty clear how everything is handled. We like to do try and buys and POCs and so on. So yeah, just talk to us.
Awesome. All right. Well, it's been great having you on the event today. Thank you so much, Andre.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you to Datum for supporting today's event. Again, don't forget to download those handouts that are available there in your audience console. Just click on those PDFs and download those. Before we go, I do want to announce the Amazon $300 gift card is going to Jeremy Spring of Missouri. Congratulations. We'll reach out to you. If you're watching this on demand, I'm sorry. This drawing has already passed. For more information on Datum, like Andre said, visit datum.com. Request a demo. There's a big button on the screen right there on the homepage that says Get Started. Request a demo. Learn about it for yourself. I hope you enjoyed the event and have a great day. We'll see you next time.